this conversation that we're having is something that I would almost refer to as MAGA 101. This is like a freshman year class in MAGA college.
When I saw the H-1B debate going around, mostly what I saw was racism against Indians.
Steve Bannon and the diehard MAGA group, they look at this as a... I'm going to bring these two together. Candace Owens, host of the...
And study.
MAGA.
Welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing another reaction. My last reaction in regards to the Supreme Court TikTok thing was pretty bad. I mean, I didn't really say much. There wasn't much to say. It was a court case. At the very least, you guys got exposed to the arguments being made. From it, I do think TikTok probably still will get banned, but the wrinkle of Donald Trump makes things very interesting. But this one, I probably will have much more commentary to say based off things that are said. So with that said, Candace Owens versus Mikhaila Peterson.
Has been at Mar-a-Lago for
more
too long
right.
And thinks that
This should be very interesting because they're both like
is, and it simply isn't.
I think it's funny
on the right, or at the very least center right.
After you released a 26-minute video detailing my dad's benzo withdrawal and allergic reactions out on YouTube.
Do you mind if I finish my sentence, Mikhaila? You've just been talking for a long time. Do you mind if I... There's not a time. There's not a time. Do you mind if I finish my sentence?
It's hard to address them all.
Do you mind if I finish my sentence? I feel like I've let you speak.
I mean, a bit, but go ahead.
Everyone's speaking.
It's about to get catty.
Civil war over visas for skilled workers has put some Trump supporters on an unusual collision course with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. The latter criticised US attitudes and work ethics, saying a culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. Well, this was Steve Bannon's response.
I've said many times that Elon came and Elon's money helped organize the grassroots effort. In his engineering mind, he saw what the problem was as we saw it, and he supported it. And for that, he gets a place at the table. There's no doubt. We love converts. But the converts sit in the back and study for years and years and years to make sure you understand the faith and you understand the nuances of the faith and understand how you can internalize the faith. Don't come up and go to the pulpit in your first week here and start lecturing people about the way things are going to be. If you're going to do that, we're going to rip your face off.
Wow. Well, it's not just a battle of the bros. Two influential voices on the right, Mikhaila Peterson and Candace Owens, traded barbs on this issue too. Peterson said, why did the woke right pretend it was illegal immigration they were against when it turned out it was immigration in general? At least be honest about it. If there's assimilation into the culture and legal immigration, what is the problem other than the skin colour? To which Candace Owens replied, Jordan Peterson's daughter thinks the visa debate comes down to Americans being upset about immigrant skin colour, lol, and the nerve to call the right woke as she makes it about race. 2025 is going to be so much fun. Well, indeed it is, because I'm now going to bring these two together. Candace Owens, host of the Candace podcast, and Mikhaila Peterson, co-founder of Peterson Academy, both join me now. Welcome to both of you. Happy New Year to both of you. And Candace, you said it was going to be fun this year. Here we go. What was your big objection to what Mikhaila said?
Well, first and foremost, just to be someone that's so new in this country and then to immediately castigate or to cast aside everybody that's in here and say, well, guess what? You're just a bunch of racists and you don't like brown skin, while at the same time referring to us as woke, was just mind-boggling to me. Just as Steve Bannon said, it means that she hasn't spent the time to understand who and what the American people are, what the MAGA movement is, and why they have concerns about this program. And so to make sure that everybody around the world understands why this is such a big debate, the H-1B visa program is essentially a foreign worker visa that allows employers to hire workers into, quote unquote, specialty programs, essentially for people who have some sort of a specialized knowledge. But to be clear, the program has been around since 1990, so the results aren't up for debate. We were just simply lied to about what we were told it was going to do, which was to source the top 1% of talent globally. Instead, they're using the program to source cashiers, teachers, janitors, PR people. So I'm going to have to believe that the American people are very much capable and willing to fulfill those positions, and that instead this program has been completely completely abused to get foreign workers here who then have a pathway to citizenship, and it lowers worker wages and it's harming the American people. So I am not fond of it. And I'll add here that prior to his passing, Lou Dobbs of Fox News looked into the program and he determined that 7 out of the 10 H-1B positions were being outsourced from Indian corporations to American corporations. So it's not globally looking at the 1%. And 5 of those 7 positions were category 1, which essentially just means that they didn't require any specialized knowledge. These are the janitors, these are the teachers, and they are just taking jobs away from the American people. So I just found her referring to this as an issue with being brown, or Americans having an issue with brown people, to be almost comical, to be honest. And I'd love to hear her further explain that position.
Okay, well, we're now going to hear it. Mikhaila, over to you.
So I don't know, Candace, if you're seeing what I'm seeing on X, but when I saw the H-1B debate going around, mostly what I saw was racism against Indians specifically. And I'm not saying there isn't a problem with the visa issue in the States in general. Getting top talent here is very difficult. Like, I had a very difficult time getting in, and I'm married to an American, and it was long and annoying, and they don't have a proper way to test people. So there's plenty of flaws to talk about. But I think right before the inauguration, having conservatives argue like amongst ourselves about an H-1B visa issue when we have an open border is silly, especially when it does kind of dredge up what I called the woke right on X. And I know you've scoffed at the term the woke right, but it encompasses these people that are focused on anti-Semitism, Jews, and they're pro-America, but their idea of America is this white America, similar to, I guess, what everyone's been arguing about for the last 200 years whenever anybody new comes into the country. And I do think it has to do with race. And I think you can see that from comments on Twitter. I mean, Vivek put up a picture. I don't know if you saw it. It wasn't Vivek. It was this horrible woman on Twitter. What's her name? Something Lupus. She's a doctor. She goes, "Oh, what do you guys think about this? Thoughts?" And it's a picture of Vivek and his brown family. And one of the most interacted with comments was subversive brown poop eating parasites. And that's what flooded my feed. And I think I had some irritation because I'm, aligning with conservatives because the woke left has been a disaster for America and for Canada and for the West for years. And it's just frustrating to see them go at each other over something like an H-1B when there are bigger issues like an open border. And I think people are misunderstanding the H-1B, although it does have its issues as well. There's also the H-2B, which nobody knows about, and that's for people who are paid lower. The average wage for an H-1B visa is $118K. So there was all this talk on Twitter about how these people are underpaid and everything. $118K is pretty good. Companies, I don't think most companies, especially tech companies, are hiring H-1Bs to become more successful, to make more money. You're not making more money by getting H-1B visas in. You're making more money by having a successful company, by hiring top talent. So I don't think we're completely not aligned entirely, because I agree the visa process in America is ridiculous. And it doesn't test people, like I said, properly. But I think it's silly to fracture the Conservative Party by arguing about 85,000 H-1B visas when we have an open border. And I don't like the racism.
Okay. Candace,
All right, let's see what
there and what you just heard from.
I mean, that's the crux of it. Like, how many people are for and against immigration is one thing, right? Illegal immigration, people have a misconception. I already debunked that consistently. But now we're in another part of the conversation. It's like, are immigrants in general good for the country? Should we have immigrants at all is now the next conversation. And the people who say, no, we shouldn't have immigration at all, I do think there can be a legitimate cause for concern that there is a sense of racism or ultra-nationalism that could play a part on why people are thinking that way. So let's see what the arguments are.
What do you also feel about the fact that for Steve Bannon and the diehard MAGA group, they look at this as a betrayal when they see Vivek and Elon and now Trump as well all piling in, enthusiastically supporting this? They say, well, hang on, that's not about making America great again. They're not buying into, we need to get all these brilliant people coming here. They think it's a system that's being abused, and that it goes against the spirit of MAGA. So you're seeing a real interesting debate raging about the heart of what MAGA really means.
I think Steve Bannon fully has his finger on the pulse there, so he's completely right. And just to respond to the point about seeing racist comments on Twitter, I've heard this argument a lot of times from people where they'll suddenly pretend that if you take a position of something and they can find a racist comment beneath it, then you're on the side of the racist.
That's not what I'm doing.
That's just called. Well, I'm just saying that literally since the day that I started my accounts on Instagram, I've been called the N-word from left and the right. It's just welcome to the internet. You know, doesn't mean that these are the positions that are represented. In fact, this conversation that we're having is something that I would
I get called the N-word on the internet. That doesn't mean that these are the positions being presented. What? I don't understand that. I'll be honest. I don't get it. I don't know if I'm missing something or what, but I don't really get that point that was
almost
made.
referred to as
Like,
MAGA
what is being
101.
presented?
This is like a freshman year class in MAGA college. I've been hearing this debate, have spoken about this debate on stage. I mean, I've spoken at more than 100 universities. And to be frank with you, because I came over from the left, when I first got into this movement, I thought the same thing. I thought, okay, well, I don't understand what the issue is if it's legal migration. But I then listened to people and I wanted to
so
understand
she's
where
against
people were coming
immigration in
from.
general.
And I
Okay.
opened my mind to what they were saying and realized that they were very much correct. And I think that's sort of where you get into trouble with the MAGA movement, when you just instantly sweep away and condemn everyone and say, well, some people were saying racist stuff about Indians, and so this entire argument now is based on racism. It simply isn't. You know, Vivek, I personally stumped for Vivek. So if you think that I'm going to be on board with people being racist for him, when I went on the ground with him all throughout Iowa when he was running for president, of course I'm also brown myself, but I understand that this has nothing to do with the merits of the arguments that are being presented here. And it is just a fact that the H-1B visa, the majority of the people that are coming into this country are not coming in with any extraordinary skills, are not coming in because they're a part of the 1%. It is being completely abused and jobs are being taken away from the American people. Now, Piers, to your point about the MAGA rift, I'm glad to see it. I very much agree with Steve Bannon. I mean, the last estimate that was done, by the way, and this speaks to Mikhaila, you saying it's just 85,000 people that are allowed annually. Well, the last estimate that was done in 2019 approximated that 600,000 foreign nationals were here on this visa program, all of them being provided with a pathway to citizenship that doesn't include in 2 years you can then get out of that program and become a permanent resident. Okay, so that they're allowed to stay in this country from up to 6 years. They don't apply for permanent residency. Of course, we can assume that the majority of them do. And they're allowed to stay up to 10 years if they go to work for the Department of Defense. Again, all of these applicants have a pathway to citizenship. So you just imagine, you're like, yeah. Okay,
Wait,
so
hold on.
they're
Let me
allowed
see
to
here
stay in this
again.
country from up to 6 years. They don't apply for permanent residency. Of course, we can assume that the majority of them do. Agree with Steve Bannon. I mean, the last estimate that was done, by the way, and this speaks to Mikhaila, you saying it's just 85,000 people that are allowed annually. Well, the last estimate that was done in 2019 approximated that 600,000 foreign nationals were here on this visa program, all of them being provided with a pathway to citizenship that doesn't include in 2 years you can then get out of that program and become a permanent resident. Okay, so that
I don't think that's true. I think she's lying. Let me look it up. Because people like her never really tell the full truth. It's just so annoying. Because that doesn't even make any sense. If you're waiting for your visa 2 years after waiting for your visa, you become a citizen, that's BS. Can you become a citizen waiting for a visa after 2 years? If you spent 2 years as a conditional resident, all right, let's look up conditional resident, not conditional. Conditional resident is a temporary immigration status granted to individuals who are married to a U.S. citizen or have a U.S. citizen step parent. As a conditional resident and becomes a permanent resident at the end of the period, those 2 years could count toward the waiting period for natural. She is full of crap. So what I read, very simply, she said that you could become a citizen after being on a visa for 2 years. False. If you have spent 2 years as a conditional resident, which is a resident that is married to someone or has a step parent that is a U.S. citizen, those 2 years count towards the waiting period for naturalized U.S. citizenship. The waiting period for citizenship is at least 2 years and 1 day if you are married to a citizen, or 4 years and 1 day in other circumstances. So it's very particular circumstances that play into becoming a citizen. She just overgeneralized it, making it seem, oh yeah, it's that easy.
They're allowed to stay in this country from up to 6 years. They don't apply for permanent residency. Of course, we can assume that the majority of them do. And they're allowed to stay up to 10 years if they go to work for the Department of Defense. Again, all of these applicants have a
Up to 6 years. That's not permanent citizenship. They're here 6 years because the asylum process and that entire process is so backed up. They're here for a while, and if they work for the Department of Defense, that's them working for the government. What is wrong with that? I don't. That's not. You're mixing things together, but
pathway to citizenship. So you just imagine you're like, yeah, I just went to work in America as a teacher for a couple of years and I became a citizen, or as a janitor for a couple of years and I became a citizen. It's not okay. And I want to be clear, all across the board, it's not just the H-1B. There's a ton of visa programs.
Yeah, she's becoming ultra nationalist.
And like I said, I have faith in the American people. I think that the American people can fulfill those positions. I know they can fulfill those positions. And so I am not on the side of Elon Musk and Trump in this debate. And I think that, Elon Musk has been at Mar-a-Lago for a bit too long and thinks that that is the sample of what MAGA is, and it simply isn't. Steve Bannon has been on the ground and spoken to those people for years. He understands what they're saying, and it would be gracious for Elon Musk to kind of step down and recognize that he's simply wrong in this debate.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you actually posted to me on X, of course, owned by Elon Musk. You said we'll have to get together in the new year so you can let me finish what I was going to say about Elon Musk. A lot has happened since I didn't finish that sentence. Exciting dialogue awaits. And we did leave people on a slight cliffhanger about Elon Musk. So now's your chance to finish that sentence, and then I'll get Mikhaila to respond. But I mean, Musk he's everywhere right now, literally poking his head into every country, it seems, in the world, particularly my country, where he's just in the last 2 days, he's called for the king to dissolve parliament, which he can't actually do. He's called for Sir Keir Starmer, the prime minister, to be imprisoned. He's hammered a previous prime minister, Gordon Brown. He's called another senior member of the cabinet here, an evil woman, Jess Phillips, who's been waging a rape genocide apology tour, I think is how he put it. I mean, this is inflammatory, incendiary stuff. What do you think his game plan is here?
Well, that was what I was going to say to you. And for people that haven't watched it, we were able to sit down and speak about a variety of issues, but we did disagree on Elon Musk. You said that he was a superhero, and I didn't say that he hadn't done superheroic things. I thought that he was going to rescue speech on X. Even that's up for debate now, given the H-1B visa debate. But I was never keen on him essentially buying a seat at the table, which is what he's done, because we don't know what Elon Musk believes. I am a Christian conservative. Elon Musk, of course, is going to be at odds with me and my beliefs because he wants to put brain chips in people's minds. He wants to go to Mars.
They're turning on Elon.
With me theologically, I think he's a transhumanist. What are his perspectives on marriage? He's had how many different women? I think he has up to 13 different children. What is Elon Musk's endgame? And we have not seen people interview him fairly. They're either incredibly hostile to him, like you saw with Don Lemon, or they're too friendly to him, and which they just see him as a superhero. And I would actually like to see someone sit down and flesh out what Elon Musk actually believes. What is his goal? What is he trying to contribute? Because I don't think you can say that you are a conservative if you are not ultimately trying to conserve the nuclear family unit. And I don't think that he's trying to do any of those things. And so we're now seeing that, okay, maybe this is about AI for him. Maybe this is about data collection for him. Maybe this is about him wanting to be the first person and getting a leg into federal governments so that he can do things that are on a larger scale in terms of artificial intelligence. I don't know the answer to that, and not knowing the answer to that made me uncomfortable when people did what we always speak against, which is essentially turn him into a celebrity, that worship him like he's Taylor Swift, and think that because he's got,
even though I don't agree with Candace, she's kind of cooking.
Allowed to direct
she's kind
us
of
on
cooking.
Politics. I just am not into celebrity worship culture.
Mikhaila,
she's kind of cooking. I'm not gonna lie. The thing is, I vehemently disagree with the idea, but this could be seen as an ideological difference of opinion in terms of the value of immigration. Now, I think that America should be the standard, and I believe immigration is good for the country. But this is interesting. This is interesting.
Interestingly, Elon Musk began following you on X just 3 days ago. And that happened after you complained that you thought YouTube was trying to shadow ban your father Jordan's interview with Tommy Robinson, very controversial figure over here in the UK. What did you think when Elon began following you?
I mean, I'm an Elon fan, so I kind of had a bit of a fangirl moment. And I'm not a fan of celebrity culture, like Candace said either. I don't usually follow that stuff, but I appreciate what Elon's doing. And I think it's totally fair if you're trying to give the world internet and doing what he's doing for the better of civilization, which I totally believe, that he has a seat at the table. He's also brilliant. So maybe some people don't understand what they're doing, but maybe it's an IQ difference thing.
Well, okay. I mean, look, I think he's a genius, no question. But I also think he does seem to amplify to his own gigantic audience. I mean, I don't know how many gazillion followers he now has, but well over 150 million, I think. I think it's 200 million. He amplifies all sorts of random people, some of whom are utterly appalling. The worst kind of horrible, extreme right-wing headbangers, and he's giving them this massive platform to spew often complete nonsense. Now, underpinning it, I think he's well-intentioned in that if you take the rape scandal in the UK, for example, he's not wrong that it was a disgraceful scandal. There was an appalling cover-up, and there should be a big national inquiry. But when he calls for the king to dissolve Parliament, which he can't actually do, when he calls for the Prime Minister to be jailed, all these kind of things, when he really personally abuses in the most awful way Jess Phillips, who's a female MP, when we've had 2 members of Parliament in the UK murdered in the last 10 years, and he's basically putting a massive target on her head for random headbangers to, go after this, as he put it, genocidal rape apologist. I mean, you couldn't think of a worse thing to say about a woman who's actually campaigned a lot in this area for many years. So I think there is a danger with Elon doesn't quite perhaps comprehend his own power on his own platform.
I mean, that's probably true. I think anybody at his level is going to be impossible to comprehend what kind of power you have. Having any type of social media following, it's shocking when people agree with you. So that's definitely true. I don't know enough about Jess Phillips, but after reading what happened to, apparently at least 250,000 girls in the UK.
Well, we don't know how many. I mean, that figure I think has been plucked out of thin air, really. I mean, what we do know,
but then some people have said more, right? And some people have said less. It's still an alarming.
What we do know, what we can agree on, is that thousands of young girls, very young, mainly underage girls, were systematically raped and abused and drugged and fed alcohol and treated like underage prostitutes by predominantly British Pakistani men in the north of England in up to 50 towns and villages. That is a horrendous scandal, and there was an equally horrendous cover-up from the bottom right to the top, of local council authorities and councillors to police who are supposed to be doing their job investigating it, to government at all levels. So all of that is true. And it's been a scandal. It's not true that mainstream media ignored it. In fact, it was exposed originally by the Times in the UK, one of the big selling national daily newspapers. They ran a campaign for many years. They started it. They had a whistleblower who'd been one of the victims. It's not true that Tommy Robinson exposed this in the way he tries to pretend. And I'm also not sure that people in America fully understand who Tommy Robinson is or what his record is. I mean, this is a guy who's been to prison 3 times now. He was convicted for attacking a police officer, convicted of, as we now know, contempt of court. He nearly wrecked 2 of the cases involving the rapists. 2 of their cases, and he collapsed because he was outside court saying defamatory things. He's been convicted of mortgage fraud, convicted of using a fake passport to get into the United States to avoid them discovering his criminal record. He was a leader of a football hooligan gang in Britain, committing endless acts of violence. This guy is not, I think, the hero that you really want to choose your hill to die on publicly supporting. And yet many Americans are doing that, which I find quite concerning. I would have thought it should at least.
I did.
Well, it should at least make Americans stop when they see that. And I know you're not American, you're Canadian, but if you take someone like Nigel Farage, who runs the Reform Party in the UK, the fact that he won't have anything to do with Tommy Robinson ought to ring alarm bells to the right in America, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's all fair. And as soon as I posted something that said free, it said something like free Tommy right now, right? And that gained a lot of support. And I had a number of people reach out and explain all that to me. But I don't think somebody like Tommy would have risen to where he's at now and gained the amount of support he had if there hadn't been so much corruption in the UK covering this all up.
Well, I think that may be true.
Because maybe he like
I think, listen,
maybe
I
he shouldn't be the
I think
hero,
that may be true.
but...
And I also think on that point, just to jump in, I also think not only is that undeniably true, but also he has been deliberately amplified as a kind of bogeyman by the other side because they know he's so flawed and so damaged and so in many ways lacking credibility
someone got hurt.
because of his extensive
Chargers
criminal record
Texans
and so
game
on.
we're going right now.
They're
I'm
quite
rooting for the
happy for him to be the
Texans.
front
You
man,
hear?
having
You
a go at them
heard?
because they think it gives them a bit of a pass. I think that can also be true.
Yeah, agreed. As for Elon getting involved in it, I think that's probably a reaction because there's been so much jumping up and down about Islamophobia for the last 10-ish years that if people in the UK, especially in the government and police officers, were actually scared to talk about what was going on for fear of being deemed Islamophobic, that's a huge problem. If we can't discuss child rape because we're worried about being called racist. Like, I understand where Candace is coming from, saying don't throw the racist term around. I do get that, and it's a slippery slope. I completely understand that. But I think what happened and what's going on in the UK is so egregious and so awful. Like, I can't think of a lot worse than finding out about something like this, especially given it's been going on for so long. And especially even people who haven't been talking about it because of the fear of being called Islamophobic. I can't think of anything worse. So I can see why Elon's freaking out.
I mean,
about
I agree with you, and I listen. I've discussed with Candace before this very lazy trait people have of apportioning that kind of label to anybody for absolutely anything to shut down debate. I've got to say, in the case of Tommy Robinson, I think he's an unashamed Islamophobe. I mean, this is a guy who, when I interviewed him, one time I interviewed him, started waving the Quran around and just openly abusing everything about Islam. And to me, that is the definition of an Islamophobic person. So it doesn't mean there aren't people who aren't racist or Islamophobes or sexist or transphobes or any of those things. It doesn't mean there aren't any, but it just means you have to be careful about how you throw that kind of accusation around, and that your primary motivation is not to shut down debate. I think Tommy Robinson was right to continue to highlight the scandal of the rape gangs, but he didn't expose it. And I also think there's a big self-interest with him in spewing deliberate lies about the Muslim community and constantly attacking Islam because it makes him money. And I'm very cynical about that. And I think that can also be true.
I would also,
Candace.
Yeah, I also want to add here, just just regarding Elon Musk shifting gears and even speaking about that issue. You are correct. Obviously, I follow UK politics to some degree because of who I'm married to, and I will tell you that it very much seemed to me like he was drudging up this issue because he was getting so much backlash on the H-1B visa. So I don't really know how sincere Elon Musk was when he weighed into that issue at all. Suddenly,
No one's not.
Do you mind if I finish my sentence, Mikhaila? You've just been talking for a long time. Do you mind if I? There's not a time. There's not a time. Do you mind if I finish my sentence?
It's hard to address them all.
Do you mind if I finish my sentence? I feel like I've let you speak.
I'm in a bit, but go ahead.
Everyone's speaking.
Go ahead.
You mind letting me finish my sentence?
Go ahead.
Caddy.
Thank you, Mikhaila. So what I was just going to say is it seemed very much to us that he was just trying to shift gears because basically he was trending for almost 2 weeks over the H-1B visa, and he was doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down. And then suddenly he's just advising on UK politics. And like you said, this issue hasn't been going on forever. It was extensively covered by the mainstream media. It was not brought up by Tommy Robinson. We can have a discussion about what's going on in the UK. That's great. I'm glad that he has spotlighted the issue. But you are correct that most Americans are not up to date on what's happening there. So it did seem like a random shift. And Mikhaila, I do have to say, you say that you're not into celebrity culture, but the way that you respond regarding Elon Musk is very much like a Swiftie. I mean, you haven't even heard what I have to say. You're defending everything he says and does to the point that all you do is issue ad hominem attacks. I mean, your first response back when we were speaking about Elon Musk is, well, it must be an IQ thing if people don't understand him. You keep just calling people stupid. People are racist. No, people are having a different opinion than Elon Musk. And you don't have to have a higher IQ than Elon Musk to have a different opinion from him.
Candace is kind of cooking Mikhaila right now.
He is the most socially sharp person in the entire world. He's done incredible things. We can definitely say that he is a genius. It does not make him right on issues of immigration spanning from here to the UK. It's ridiculous.
Substantially, I don't agree, but like she's cooking Mikhaila.
I think saying that Elon is upset about child rape because a bunch of people he doesn't really care about were flapping about the H-1B visa is ridiculous. And I think it's funny that you mentioned ad hominem attacks after you released a 26-minute video detailing my dad's benzo withdrawal and allergic reactions out on YouTube. It's just funny, like you're going after me for ad hominem.
Well, actually, look, now you mentioned that, I was going to bring that. Well, hang on. I was going to bring that up. For those who don't know what you're talking about, let's play a little clip from that.
Oh, I didn't sleep that month. I didn't sleep for 25 days. I didn't sleep at all. I didn't sleep at all for 25 days.
How is that possible?
I'll tell you how it's possible. You lay in bed, frozen in something approximating terror for 8 hours, and then you get up.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, not
and
good.
This is from cider.
I feel like Joe Rogan is all of us. I'm listening to that, and it doesn't pass the sniff test. I'm just going, wait, what, apple cider? You didn't sleep for how long? What are you talking about? He brings up Mikhaila, by the way. That's his daughter. We're going to get into it. That explanation does not make sense to me whatsoever. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not claiming to know how everybody's body reacts to apple cider, but I just don't think that you wouldn't sleep for that long because of it.
Okay, so Mikhaila, well, I'll come to you in a moment, Candace. Mikhaila, how did you feel when you heard about that?
Well, I think it's funny because, like, we're connected online, Candace. So if she has an issue with my family, she could literally just message me. Her husband has my husband's phone number, you know? So it's just like a weird thing to do. I don't know where it came from. As for the apple cider reaction, I've gone over this so many times, but it's fair if Candace didn't know this. Although I don't know why you would make a 26-minute video without doing some research. It wasn't apple cider. It was a sodium metabisulfite allergy. And it was near anaphylaxis. And people don't sleep in that state. And when we went through that, which was horrible, it was horrible. We had a hard time with the medical system. We didn't know how to treat it. It took us like years to figure out what the allergy was. If you talk to a doctor and say you have that allergy, they go, what's that? Like, it's not a common allergy, but it's not uncommon. You can Google it. And it just seems a little bit cruel to like pull that up. You also started that video by saying, you know, why is Jordan Peterson's audience, male audience, like diminishing? Let's get into it, which is just, it's manipulative, right? It's not true. So you have this giant audience, Candace, and you say these things as if they're true, which confuses people when they're not. So I don't know what to say about it. It's aggravating, and I think it's a mean girl high school tactic.
Okay, Candace, you're a mean girl.
Again, accusing me of ad hominem attacks when I feel like she's engaging in them. Just to be clear and to contextualize this clip, Jordan Peterson was trending. I cover trends, I cover the news, and I think it's fair to cover topics when they come to the surface. He was essentially tweeting ad hominem attacks that were written like sonnets. It was very bizarre, and people were going, what's going on with Dr. Jordan Peterson? And it became a Twitter trend, and so I covered it. Is there something wrong with covering a trending topic? I certainly don't think there is, or I wouldn't have a podcast or things to speak about. Regarding the your father's audience, there were a lot of people who, after his addiction and feeling like he was not honest about his addiction, a lot of men who sort of switched off from Jordan Peterson. I mean, that is just a fact. I understand and respect that it is your father, and so you're naturally going to be defensive of him. And if it was a family member of mine, I would naturally be defensive of him. But to pretend like I plucked the topic out of pure air simply to be a mean girl, and not because it was trending, literally saying that people are wondering what's going on with Jordan Peterson, I think that's you not being very genuine about why I was discussing it. And I think that I was tremendously respectful. I also paid him a huge compliment. I think his
Candace is becoming very, very good in framing a story. I think at this point, Mikhaila's kind of outmatched. I don't know the full context on why she even bring up whether or not he's truthfully has this allergy or not. I don't know what the purpose would be, personally. All right, my
book
bad.
and what it did for men worldwide at a time when men were being completely stomped on and masculinity was being questioned. And I said I would never remove that and would never take the credit away from him. But there have been some things that have just registered to the public as odd. I didn't make your father trend that day. So I think he's able to deal with a little bit of criticism.
You want to respond, Mikhaila?
I guess I'm just confused because Candace said she wasn't into celebrity culture. So then I thought maybe it was just a personal thing. If it's not about a celebrity, but maybe I just got that wrong. I don't know
Yeah, I
what
think you
else
just
I
got
can
it wrong when I
respond to
said-
about that. People can listen to. Can I finish? Thank you. People can listen to the 26-minute.
Yo, it's a
you can
mad
say, "Oh, I
caddy,
said
bro."
something nice at the end." It's the same thing when you say these things and your tone is off. You can be like, "Oh, tone doesn't matter," but you say things sometimes in a bit of a manipulative fashion to get people to think a certain way. And then when people bring them up, you go, well, those aren't the words I said, but tone matters too. Anyway, people can go on YouTube and listen to the 26-minute section of your video on Dad and see what they think. I think it's high school mean girl tactics. I don't care if you think that's ad hominem either.
Candace?
Well, I would just say that when I was referring to celebrity culture, I meant worshiping people because they're celebrities. So I think that would make me ideologically consistent. And like I said, he was trending that day. I covered it as a trending topic. It's not a mean girl thing, but it might feel that way to you because it's your father and you have a personal relationship. You know, I
can
apologize
hear.
if you are hurt from me covering the news, but like I said, we have to develop a thicker skin.
That's
when
a
we
very
cover things
very
about me
weird way to
routinely on a daily
characterize
basis. If people want to cover
that,
after
but okay.
I have, you know, an addiction and people say, hey, after this, I think people lost faith in Candace Owens and that becomes a trending topic. I think that's fair game. It may not feel good to me, but I think that it would be fair game and it would be newsworthy.
Okay.
You do know that 1/5 of Americans are on psych meds, right? Are you aware of the statistics?
Yes.
Are those all people with
Correct.
addictions? Like, is that your view of people on psych meds just in general?
No, your father spoke out about his benzo addiction. So I don't understand why you're asking
Yeah,
me
no,
a question about people that take psych meds.
Benzo dependence. Maybe you don't know anything about this. If you're on a psych med long term, you form a dependence on it and it's very difficult to get off of. They're starting to teach this in medical school. It's a disaster because so many Americans are on psych meds. So yeah, he suffered from psych med withdrawal because they make you form a dependence on it, especially long term. Now, calling it an addiction as if he was on heroin or something is manipulative. You know, so when we talked about it and we were very honest about what was going on, part of it was to spread awareness that 1/5 of Americans are on medications that cause dependence and don't know it. It's horrible. People die because of it. So I think laughing about it is like, it's not cool.
Well, I certainly don't think I laughed at it. I think benzodependence is pretty much a euphemism for an addiction. And if you know anything about my work
That's
and
the
me being
problem,
super
though.
crunchy and speaking about why I think medicines are bad because they do create dependencies, which then yield people going onto the streets for something stronger. I mean, the benzo addiction becomes a heroin addiction because the doctor won't write you the prescription anymore. So you turn to the streets for something stronger because your body is dependent on it. I'm sorry that, again, you are offended by this conversation simply because it is your father. I don't think I've been offensive in my language. And if you find it to be manipulative, that I think that it impacted the way that men saw him when they publicly were saying that on Twitter. We covered the tweets that people were writing on that day about how, they used to idolize him. They're so grateful for his book, but this is not the person that they knew. Again, I'm sorry you're offended by that, but it's just the reality of what happened. And I can tell this is a sensitive topic for you, but it is what it is, Mikhaila. I don't know what to say. I don't think anybody's laughed at it. I think it's a good conversation to be had, and no one is more anti-big pharma than me. I mean, I have an entire series against big pharma, so.
I don't even know where to start with that. Benzo addicts will go to the street for heroin. We were trying to spread awareness about psych med withdrawal, and we were very honest about what everybody was going through. I went through psych.
So what it sounds like is, to me, without having any context of the situation, what it sounds like to me is that, whatchamacallit, Jordan Peterson was revealing a circumstance that he was going through, and Candace is claiming that because he struggled with drug addiction potentially, because of I don't know, that because of this drug addiction, because of what he's been going through, he lost credibility. I mean, that's so stupid to me. That's just me. That's just stupid to me.
Myself.
It's
It was one of the
it's
worst
possible it
experiences
could
of my
be.
life.
It's true.
It kills people, causes akathisia, which makes people suicidal. It's a terrible side effect. So that's what we were talking about. Now, if you want to twist that a little bit and be like, he's losing his audience because he's an addict, I don't really know what to say.
Okay. I think we've had a robust exchange about that, and you both made your views.
That was such a weird conversation.
Slightly lighten the mood here. Turn to some cultural matters that have been in the news in the last few days. The Golden Globes last night, Candace, the host Nikki Glaser seemed to take us back to the good old days where you could roast the audience and nobody seemed to mind. Let's take a little look.
Nikki Glaser, she cooks.
And welcome to the 82nd Golden Globes, Ozempic's biggest night. I am not here to roast you tonight. I want you to know that. And how could I, really? You're all so famous, so talented, so powerful. I mean, you could really do anything. I mean, except tell the country who to vote for. But it's okay. You'll get them next time. I look out and I see some of the hardest working actors in show business. And by that, I mean your servers. Yes. Yes, give it up. They'll be bringing you your cocktails to drink and your food that you'll look at.
I made some digs about P. Diddy and freak-out parties and basically gave them a good old roast. Is this a sign, perhaps, that post-Trump's victory, Hollywood needs it's got to move with the times and get rid of the woke crap?
Blaming wokeism for, wokeism is annoying. But blaming wokeism for, jokes like this that you can attack people individually is not, what? I don't know about all that.
Certainly hope so. I mean, I'm looking forward to the next election cycle because we couldn't have sent a stronger message to them this year. They brought out everyone they could possibly bring out, from Beyonce to Taylor Swift, to tell us who to vote for, and Americans firmly rejected it. I mean, I've never.
You brought out Hulk Hogan and some random comedian.
I mean, they even tried out.
You did Undertaker. You had The Undertaker and Kane have Donald Trump on the show. You had Joe Rogan endorse him. You had Dana White. Shut the hell up, Candace.
And
what are you
that
talking
we are
about?
laughing at them, that Hollywood is no longer this sparkly, glittery, unattainable thing. For the most part, Americans think they're out of touch elitists who don't even touch their own door handles. So I'm happy to see that. Her jokes definitely, I mean, I just chuckled a couple of times. It definitely seems like it's not about just being angry that the country isn't listening to you. So good for her.
Yeah, I mean, Mikhaila, I thought it was interesting because since Ricky Gervais bowed out of doing these things, or was probably encouraged to, because they couldn't dare take the risk of him taking the piss out of people, it's been crying out for a host to come and do that, to just have a bit of fun. You know, the thing about the woke brigade that I find so unutterably boring is they're so joyless. Like every single joke, they're so offended by. There's no room for humor anymore, because the whole point of humor is it sends up somebody somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what Candace said and what you said there. I think everyone's breathed a sigh of relief, and the people that were concerned for their jobs, so especially people in Hollywood, and I don't think that's an excuse for not speaking out, because they were just propagating like evil for years. So that's not an excuse. But now that their jobs aren't necessarily in as much jeopardy, people are loosening up, and I'm pretty thrilled with the direction we're heading in. Like there's definitely problems. There's visa problems, there's immigration problems, there's like people bickering amongst themselves. There's problems, but I think we're headed in a really good direction. And I think Canada might be headed in a good direction too.
Well, I was going to ask you about Canada,
I'm
because
excited.
Because Justin Trudeau has quit, and many people say yes, it
Yeah.
was down to policies, but also down to just the fact he was the most woke leader in the history of wokedom.
In the history
That
of
just
wokedom.
happened. I know that there was like talk a couple months ago about him stepping down and then nothing happened, but I mean, apparently it's true today, which is huge. I think most people can get, maybe most people in Canada can't get behind that, but I think it's very exciting. My only concern is I think the process after he steps down is Liberals get to choose another leader. So maybe they've learned something. And I know it's only for an interim period, and Pierre Poilievre is most likely going to take the next election, which will be so good for Canada. So it's very exciting. But I've never seen a prime minister. Maybe it happened when I was very, very little, but I've never seen a prime minister step down. So I'm not even sure what the process is after that happens.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it comes from within until there's an election. I mean, Candace, the thing about Trudeau he was like a lot of woke people. He was an unbelievable hypocrite. When he wasn't lecturing about racial injustice, he was putting on blackface repeatedly. It's almost like there wasn't a moment in his life when he hadn't put on blackface to some party. And yet he felt he had the right, the moral right and self-righteousness to lecture us about stuff like racial injustice.
Damn, Justin
He
Trudeau.
just seemed like a bad
I never
faith
was a big
actor
fan
from the
of
very
Justin
beginning, and
Trudeau
I think
either, to be
Americans
honest.
really got tuned in when we saw how the truckers were treated throughout COVID. That was absolutely ridiculous. And so I'm definitely glad to see him go. He's been a terrible leader. But sometimes, and this is my faith speaking, these bad things happen for a reason, because it does awaken us. It awakens us to how bad things really could get. And I think that he played his role. I call him
that's
Little
so funny.
Castro. He definitely played his role and played his
Fidel
part. And I think
Castro.
jolted Canadians
Okay.
and Americans into what's really happening in this region of the world.
Is that, I mean, it seems to be happening everywhere. Partly it's a rejection of incumbent leaders, where people are just now, I think probably post-pandemic and all the fallout from that, they've just lost trust in governments generally. They're angry perhaps, they're impoverished by what's happened, and they want change, partly. But I also think there is an ongoing, pretty dramatic repudiation of wokery, you know, of what woke stands for. People are just sick of it.
Absolutely. People are totally sick of it. And that's why I said, as much as we can hate these individuals, it took them being so radical. It took them being so left for most of us who were just kind of going along and saying, okay, this is totally fine, to realize how extreme things were and to fight for sanity. I mean, we needed the trans lobby and the trans people to come out and say women can be men and men can be women, for us to wake up and stick our head up of the water and go, wait, what are you saying? What's going on? And so I welcome that. I'm glad that it happened. I'm actually glad even for the Joe Biden presidency. I know that sounds insane, but for people to realize that you can just fully have a puppet in office who is actually not doing anything, to start to question who's really in control of the government, because that wouldn't have happened if we didn't see the obvious mental decline of Joe Biden and wonder who are making those decisions. So all of these conversations, plus the independent media.
All right, right wing is
because
all
of
on the
mistakes
same
that were
board.
made
When they
throughout
attack the
COVID
left,
and, with these
there's
sorts
some
of leaders at the helm of
solidarity.
their nations.
Yeah, Mikhaila
Or
also
non-leaders, I
seeing
should say.
right, and Mikhaila, and the mere fact that the three of us all have big platforms that are not
that are right winged, of course, because Pierre Morgan's, you're not a centrist, you're a right winger.
conventional legacy media, shows you the way that
Yep.
it's going and the way people are now consuming information. It's no longer being controlled by traditional mainstream media. It's being controlled, the message, actually by people like us.
And thank goodness for that. So that's true. That's one really good thing that came out of, like, I would say the last, I don't know, maybe 8 years, when it was extremely, extremely left and woke. I also think it's I suppose a good lesson in how far people will go along with something, how far people will follow authority before they turn away. I was definitely surprised that it got to where it was. So say even the trans kind of mutilation, the surgery that's been going on with underage people in the US and in Western like society, I didn't really think it would get to that. I remember when Dad started
Heal me,
speaking out about
please. Heal me,
the trans
please.
debate in 2016,
Yo.
and I thought at the time that he was going too far. I was like, it's never gonna, I just didn't think it would
Bro.
get as bad as it did. And then we saw what happened with COVID, and we saw what happened with vaccines. Like, it got way worse. People can get pushed way further than I thought the average people could get pushed without pushing back. But I think that's a good lesson for at least.
All right, nothing of substance. Yeah, they're just gonna agree for the rest of it. Well, with that said, that's all we got for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts. Of course, you have a good one. Take care and peace.